The stars stretched endlessly, a shimmering sea of light against the velvety black of space. Aboard the Andromeda runner, Elara and Saphira Lynton sat in the cockpit, each lost in their thoughts. The identical twin sisters, renowned explorers and pioneers of deep space charting, had carved a name for themselves by venturing into the galaxy's most perilous frontiers. Elara, ever the optimist, leaned back in her chair and swirled a cup of steaming coffee. "Can you believe it, Saf? We're the first humans to scan the Polaris Rift up close. Just imagine what we'll find." Saphira, pragmatic and methodical, scanned the ship's holographic display. "I'm imagining the reports of missing vessels in this sector. We should have waited for more data before jumping in." Elara rolled her eyes. "We've been exploring for years, Saf. You know as well as I do that the best discoveries happen when you take risks. Risks are one thing. Getting stranded in an uncharted sector of space is another." Saphira glanced at her sister. "Just keep your focus. We're not here to sightsee." The ship hummed softly as its quantum engines propelled it through the void. The sisters had entered the Polaris Rift on a routine survey mission, tasked with mapping the dense nebulae and gravitational anomalies that made the region notorious among spacefarers. Yet something about the sector felt different, an unseen presence that hung heavy in the air, like the anticipation before a storm. Elara's attention was drawn to a sudden flicker on the long-range scanners. "Hey, Saf, take a look at this." Saphira turned, frowning at the anomaly on the display. A distortion in space rippled like a whirlpool, its center emitting faint but rhythmic energy signatures. "That's not natural," Saphira muttered, her fingers flying across the console. "Could be a derelict ship or something else." Elara's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "We have to check it out." Saphira hesitated. "This feels wrong. That signal's too precise to be random, but too weak to be a distress beacon. It could be a trap." "You're always so suspicious," Elara teased. "One quick look, and if it's nothing, we move on." Against her better judgment, Saphira relented. "Fine, but keep the engines primed in case we need to make a quick getaway." The Andromeda runner adjusted course, gliding toward the anomaly. As they neared, the distortion began to pulse, the rhythmic energy growing stronger. Suddenly, the ship's lights dimmed, and the control panels flickered. "Systems are glitching," Saphira said, her voice tight. "Something's interfering with our power." Before they could react, a surge of energy engulfed the ship. The cockpit filled with a blinding light, and a deafening hum drowned out their screams. When Elara opened her eyes, she found herself lying on a surface that felt like cool, smooth glass. The air smelled faintly of flowers, tinged with something metallic. She sat up, her vision clearing to reveal an alien landscape. They were in a vast, crystalline forest. Towering spires of translucent stone jutted from the ground, their surfaces shimmering with iridescent hues. The sky above was an endless expanse of lavender, dotted with 3 massive moons that bathed the land in an unearthly glow. "Elara!" She turned to see Saphira a few feet away, her face pale but determined. "You okay?" "I think so," Elara said, standing shakily. "Where are we?" Saphira scanned the horizon, her sharp eyes taking in the alien surroundings. "I don't know, but it's not on any map I've seen." Their conversation was interrupted by a low, rumbling growl. Emerging from the crystalline trees was a group of humanoid figures. They were feline in appearance, with sleek fur that gleamed like polished metal and eyes that glowed with an inner fire. They moved with a grace and power that spoke of deadly efficiency. The sisters froze as the creatures encircled them, their movements precise and calculated. One stepped forward, taller than the others and adorned in intricate armor that seemed to shimmer with its own light. It spoke, its voice a deep, resonant purr. The words were incomprehensible, but the tone carried an unmistakable authority. Elara exchanged a glance with Saphira. "Any idea what they're saying?" "None," Saphira said, her hands subtly moving toward the multi-tool at her belt. The lead feline tilted its head, studying them with an unnerving intensity. A smaller figure stepped forward, holding a device that emitted a soft hum. A moment later, the feline spoke again, but this time, the words were clear. Humans, it said, its voice smooth yet commanding. You are the first of your kind to set foot on Felidara. Welcome. Elara swallowed hard. Why have you brought us here? The feline leader's eyes narrowed. Your species possesses something our kind has long sought. A resilience, a genetic adaptability. You are here to ensure the survival of our race. Saphira's voice was cold. You expect us to cooperate with that? The leader's whiskers twitched. Cooperation is irrelevant. You were chosen. You will fulfill your purpose. Before the sisters could protest, the feline guards closed in, their claws gleaming in the moonlight. Elara and Saphira were escorted through the crystalline forest, their captors' movements fluid and almost hypnotic. The air was heavy with a mixture of floral scents and a faint metallic tang that stung the sisters' nostrils. The alien felines said little, their communication limited to sharp gestures and the occasional low growl. Elara leaned toward Saphira as they walked, her voice a whisper. What do you think they meant about ensuring their survival? This doesn't sound like a diplomatic exchange. Saphira's expression was grim. It's not diplomacy. It's captivity. Whatever they want, we need to figure out how to get out of here before it's too late. The forest gave way to a massive city that rose from the ground like a living entity. Towering crystalline structures spiraled toward the lavender sky, their surfaces glowing with internal light. Bridges of translucent material stretched between the buildings, and feline figures moved gracefully along them, their forms blending seamlessly with the alien architecture. Elara's breath caught. This place, it's beautiful. Don't let the beauty distract you, Saphira muttered. We're prisoners here, not tourists. The sisters were led into a grand hall carved from a single massive crystal. The walls shimmered with cascading colors, and at the far end of the room sat a feline figure larger than any they had seen so far. Its fur was a deep silver, and its eyes gleamed like molten gold. It reclined on a throne of pure, radiant crystal, exuding an air of unchallenged authority. The guards stepped aside, and the sisters were left standing before the imposing figure. I am High Sovereign Nyxara, it announced, its voice a low, commanding purr. You stand in the heart of Felidara, the last bastion of our kind. Saphira stepped forward, her tone sharp. Why have you taken us? What do you want from us? Nyxara's whiskers twitched, a gesture that seemed equal parts amusement and irritation. You, humans, possess what we lack. Our species, once proud and boundless, now dwindles. Generations of refinement have brought us to the edge of extinction, but your genetic diversity could save us. Elara's voice wavered. You want us to what? Help you reproduce? Nyxara inclined its head. Precisely. You will serve as the foundation for a new generation of hybrids, a blending of your adaptability and our strength. Saphira's hands clenched into fists. And if we refuse? Nyxara's golden eyes bore into hers. Your consent is unnecessary. We have the means to ensure compliance, though I would prefer it to be unnecessary. Before either sister could respond, a sharp gesture from Nyxara sent the guards forward. Despite their struggles, the sisters were taken from the hall and escorted to a towering crystalline spire. The room they were brought to was breathtaking. A circular chamber with walls of glowing crystal that cast soft, shifting patterns of light. A massive window overlooked the alien city, and the 3 moons hung in the sky like watchful sentinels. Despite the luxurious surroundings, the sisters felt the weight of their captivity. Elara slumped onto a bench carved from crystal, her head in her hands. This can't be happening. They're treating us like livestock. Saphira paced the room, her sharp eyes scanning for weaknesses in their prison. We're not livestock, and we're not staying. There's always a way out. Elara looked up. Do you think they've already done this to others? Humans? Is this why ships go missing near the rift? Saphira stopped pacing. It's possible. If they've been monitoring us for decades like they said, this might not be the first time they've taken someone. Then why haven't we heard about it? Because no one's escaped to tell the story, Saphira said darkly. The room's door shimmered as it opened, and a feline figure stepped inside. Unlike the armored guards, this one wore a flowing garment of translucent fabric that glittered like stars. It held a tray with 2 bowls of a viscous, glowing liquid. The creature set the tray on a pedestal and spoke, its voice softer than Nyxara's but still alien. Consume. You will need strength. Elara glared at the figure. We're not drinking that. The feline tilted its head, its luminous eyes narrowing. Refusal is unwise. Your nourishment is imperative. Saphira stepped forward, her posture defiant. What happens if we don't? The feline paused, as if weighing its response. Compliance is preferred. Resistance will be corrected. The tension in the room was palpable as the feline left, the door sealing seamlessly behind it. Elara stared at the glowing bowls, her expression conflicted. What do we do? Saphira's voice was steady. We don't give them anything they want. Not yet. We need to figure out their systems, their weaknesses. And if we can't, then we fight, Saphira said, her jaw tightening. But first, we need to buy time. The 3 moons hung low in the lavender sky, their silvery light casting long, spectral shadows through the crystalline spire. Inside their chamber, Elara and Saphira moved with practiced stealth, their whispered conversations and quiet movements forming the groundwork for their escape. Saphira crouched near the wall panel by the door, using a makeshift tool fashioned from fragments of the crystalline furnishings to bypass the control interface. Sparks flickered as she worked, her expression a mask of concentration. Are you sure this is going to work? Elara whispered, her eyes darting nervously toward the sealed door. Saphira smirked without looking up. Give me a little credit, El. I've cracked systems far more complicated than this one. Just keep an ear out for the patrols. Elara nodded, straining to hear any movement beyond the door. The faint hum of the crystalline city resonated through the walls, a sound that was oddly soothing yet unnervingly alien. With a soft click, the door's shimmering surface dissolved, revealing a dimly lit corridor. Got it, Saphira said, rising to her feet. Let's move, Elara urged, stepping into the hallway. The spire's interior was a labyrinth of glowing passageways and spiraling staircases. The architecture, though breathtaking, seemed designed to disorient intruders. Walls pulsed with shifting patterns of light, and the floors appeared to ripple underfoot. We need to head down, Elara said. Everything I've overheard points to the Nexus being underground. Saphira nodded, taking the lead. Stay close. We can't afford to get separated. The sisters moved quickly but cautiously, avoiding patrols with careful timing. They passed chambers filled with strange devices and vats of luminous liquid, each one adding to the growing unease in their stomachs. What do you think this is all for? Elara murmured as they crept past a room where feline scientists worked over glowing consoles. Something they're desperate to protect, Saphira replied. But desperate species don't always make rational decisions. Their progress was halted when they reached a large atrium guarded by 2 massive Felidarans clad in heavy, shimmering armor. The twins ducked behind a column, their breathing shallow. How do we get past them? Elara whispered. Saphira scanned the area. There's a ventilation shaft over there, she said, pointing to a narrow opening near the ceiling. If we can reach it, we can bypass the guards. Elara looked up at the shaft, then down at the smooth, featureless walls. How exactly are we supposed to climb that? Saphira smirked. We don't climb. We improvise. She pulled a length of thin, flexible tubing from her belt, a piece she'd scavenged from the chamber's fixtures, and tied it to a sharp crystal shard. With a flick of her wrist, she sent the makeshift grapple soaring. It caught on the edge of the shaft, and Saphira tugged it to ensure it was secure. Your turn, she said, gesturing for Elara to climb first. With some effort, the sisters managed to haul themselves into the shaft, their bodies crammed into the tight space. The air inside was cool and carried the faint scent of ozone. Remind me to never complain about elevators again, Elara muttered as they crawled through the narrow passage. After what felt like an eternity, the shaft opened into a cavernous chamber deep beneath the city. The Nexus. The room was vast, its ceiling lost in darkness. At its center stood a massive, pulsating structure of pure crystal, glowing with a kaleidoscope of colors. Strange, organic cables extended from the crystal, connecting it to consoles and machinery that hummed with alien energy. Dozens of Felidarans moved about the chamber, their movements precise and purposeful. Many wore the same flowing garments as the scientist who had brought them food, while others appeared to be soldiers, their sleek forms shadowing the scientists as they worked. Elara and Saphira crouched in the shadows near the edge of the chamber, their eyes wide as they took in the scene. "What is that thing?" Elara whispered. Saphira's gaze was fixed on the pulsating crystal. "If I had to guess, I'd say it's their power source. Or something even more important." As they watched, a group of scientists approached the crystal, carrying what appeared to be a containment pod. Inside was a faintly glowing humanoid figure, its form blurred by the crystalline casing. Elara's stomach churned. "Is that a human?" Saphira's jaw tightened. "Looks like it. And if they've done this to others, we're not the first." The scientists placed the pod into a slot on the crystal, and the entire structure flared with light. The room was bathed in blinding radiance as the crystal emitted a low, resonant hum that reverberated through the floor. Elara shielded her eyes. "What are they doing?" "Harvesting," Saphira said grimly. "They're using human biology to power this thing. Or maybe to modify themselves." Elara's hands trembled. "We have to stop this. We have to destroy it." Saphira nodded. "Agreed. But we can't do it from here. We need to find the controls." The twins crept along the perimeter of the chamber, keeping to the shadows. Saphira's keen eyes scanned the consoles, searching for anything that might give them access to the Nexus's systems. As they neared one of the smaller stations, a voice behind them froze them in their tracks. "Did you really think you could escape unnoticed?" They turned to see Nyxara standing behind them, flanked by a squad of armored guards. The High Sovereign's golden eyes burned with a mix of amusement and menace. "You humans are as resourceful as we expected," Nyxara said, her voice a low growl. "But resourcefulness will not save you." Elara stepped forward, her voice shaking but defiant. "What you're doing is monstrous. You're kidnapping people, experimenting on them." Nyxara's whiskers twitched. "Survival often requires sacrifice. You, of all beings, should understand that." Saphira's hand inched toward the makeshift weapon at her belt, but Nyxara's gaze snapped to her. "Do not test me," the High Sovereign warned. "You have seen the Nexus, and now you understand why you are here. You are vital to our future. You should be honored." "Honored?" Saphira spat. "We're not pawns in your twisted plans." Nyxara's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps you need a demonstration of the consequences of defiance." At her signal, the guards surged forward, and the sisters braced themselves for a fight they knew they couldn't win. The Nexus chamber thrummed with alien energy, the pulsating crystal casting eerie reflections on the walls. Elara and Saphira stood their ground, defiance blazing in their eyes despite the odds. High Sovereign Nyxara's golden gaze swept over them, equal parts predator and sovereign, as the armored guards moved to encircle the sisters. "Last chance," Nyxara purred, her voice resonating with a dangerous calm. "Surrender, and your integration into the Nexus will be painless. Resist, and you will learn what true suffering means." Elara exchanged a glance with Saphira, her voice low but firm. "We don't surrender. Not now, not ever." Saphira's fingers tightened around the shard of crystal she'd hidden at her waist. "You want our genes? You'll have to kill us first." Nyxara's whiskers twitched in faint amusement. "If you think death will absolve you of your duty, you underestimate us. But so be it." She gestured with a clawed hand, and the guards lunged. The twins fought like cornered animals, their movements fueled by adrenaline and desperation. Saphira slashed with her crystal shard, catching one guard across the faceplate and sending it staggering back. Elara ducked and rolled, grabbing a fallen guard's energy staff and swinging it in wide arcs to keep the others at bay. Despite their courage, the Felidarans were too many, their speed and strength overwhelming. Elara was tackled to the ground. The wind knocked from her lungs as a guard pinned her arms. Saphira managed to take down another guard before a blow to her side sent her sprawling. She clutched her ribs, gasping for air as the guards closed in. Nyxara stepped forward, her movements as graceful as they were menacing. "Your resistance is admirable, but futile." You cannot fight evolution. Elara gritted her teeth, struggling against the guard's grip. This isn't evolution. It's exploitation. Nyxara crouched before her, tilting her head. And what is your species but masters of exploitation? Your survival has always come at the expense of others. Your planet, your fellow creatures. Are we so different? Elara's voice shook, but her words were steady. We are different because we choose. We fight for freedom, not domination. Nyxara's gaze darkened. Freedom is a luxury of the strong, and soon, your strength will be ours. Before Nyxara could signal her guards to drag the sisters to the Nexus, a sudden explosion rocked the chamber. The floor trembled as a section of the wall collapsed, sending shards of crystal raining down. The sisters looked up to see a figure emerging from the dust, a Felidaran scientist holding a small, glowing device. "Stop this madness, Nyxara!" the scientist shouted. The High Sovereign's eyes narrowed. "Traitor," she hissed. The scientist stepped forward, the device in his hand glowing brighter. "You've pushed us too far. Harvesting human biology to save ourselves is not survival. It's destruction. We were once a proud people. What have you turned us into?" Nyxara's tail lashed. "You dare to defy me, Salith? Our kind will perish without this project." "And perhaps we should," Salith said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Survival without honor is no survival at all." The scientist turned to the sisters, his luminous eyes filled with regret. "Humans, I am sorry for what my people have done to you. I cannot undo the harm, but I can give you a chance to stop it." He tossed the device to Saphira, who caught it instinctively. "What is this?" she asked, her voice wary. "The Nexus's core failsafe," Salith explained. "Activate it, and the crystal will shatter. But be warned, it will destroy everything in this chamber, including you." Elara's eyes widened. "What about the city? Your people?" Salith's expression was grim. "The city will survive, but the Nexus project will end. Perhaps, in time, my people will find another way, one that does not involve sacrifice." Nyxara snarled, her claws extending. "You would doom us all for the sake of these invaders?" Salith's gaze hardened. "I would save us from ourselves." The guards hesitated, their loyalty wavering as the weight of Salith's words settled over them. Saphira tightened her grip on the device and looked at Elara. "What do you think?" Elara met her sister's gaze, tears glistening in her eyes. "If this is the only way to stop them, we have to do it." Saphira nodded, her voice steady. "Together, then." As Nyxara roared in fury, the sisters sprinted toward the Nexus, dodging guards and energy blasts. The crystal pulsed violently, sensing the threat, as if it were alive. Elara and Saphira reached the base of the Nexus, the glowing core towering above them. Saphira held the device over the crystal, her finger hovering over the activation button. Nyxara's voice echoed through the chamber. "Stop this. If you destroy the Nexus, you destroy your own chance at survival." Elara looked back at the High Sovereign, her voice calm but resolute. "We'd rather die free than live as tools for your survival." Saphira pressed the button. The device emitted a high-pitched whine, and the Nexus began to crack, fractures spreading across its surface. The crystal's glow intensified, and a deafening roar filled the chamber as energy erupted in waves. The guards and scientists fled, their forms disappearing into the chaos. Nyxara stood frozen, her golden eyes wide with disbelief, before the light consumed her. Elara and Saphira held each other tightly as the Nexus shattered, a blinding light enveloping them. When the light faded, the sisters awoke to the cool grass of the crystalline forest. The sky above was calm, the three moons casting their gentle glow. Elara sat up, her head pounding. "Are we alive?" Saphira groaned, clutching her side. "Barely, but we did it. The Nexus is gone." They looked toward the city in the distance. Its towering spires still stood, but the pulsing glow that had defined it was absent. The hum of the Nexus had been replaced by an eerie silence. The sisters rose unsteadily, leaning on each other for support. "What now?" Elara asked. Saphira's lips curled into a faint smile. "Now we find a way off this planet. And if we survive, we make sure no one else gets trapped here." As they began their trek through the forest, the weight of their actions settled over them. They had struck a blow for freedom, not just for themselves, but for the countless others who might have suffered at the hands of the Felidarans. And though their journey was far from over, they knew one thing for certain. Survival meant nothing without the courage to fight for what was right.